Good evening. I'm going to call our Baldwin County Planning and Zoning Commission of June 1st, 2023 to order. And at this time, we will stand and have a prayer and a pledge of allegiance. Father, we're thankful to you for the day, for the blessings we've each received. We thank you for the blessing of living in this great county. And Father, for the responsibilities we all have to make this a great place to live. We pray for insight and wisdom on what we decide here tonight. We pray for order. We pray that what we do shows respect for each other and honor to you. We pray all this in the name of Jesus. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, I'll call roll. Brandon Bias, Robert Davis, Plummer Tonsmeyer, Jason Paget, Michael Mullick,
Here.
Greg Seibert,
Here.
Bill Booyer, here, Jamie Stratiger, Mike McKenzie, here. Rebecca Teal, Diane Burnett, here. Michael Fletcher. All right, we have a quorum. At this time, we will have an approval of our minutes of our last meeting of our work session on regular meeting on May 4th. These were sent out. I think most had opportunity to make comments. Does anybody have anything else on these? If not, I'd entertain a motion that both be approved.
So move.
All right, Mr. Boyer's made a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All right, Michael Mullick made the motion to second the motion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the minutes are approved. All right, just for some quick announcements, hopefully if you wanted to speak tonight on one of the items on the agenda, you stopped at the front desk and signed up. We will go through each item, call on each item to open it for a public hearing. Our staff will make a presentation. We will ask questions of the staff. We will then allow the applicant to come up and have conversations with them. And then I have a list of everybody that signed up, and you will be called on one at a time to come up and speak. And you'll try to keep it 3 minutes. You'll come to the podium here at the center and tell us what your concerns are. And at some point, once everybody's had opportunity to speak, I will close the public hearing. Please know that once I close the public hearing, you won't have an opportunity to raise your hand and come back up and speak. So please do that. Make sure you get in while the public hearing is open. Please mute your phones for us. That always helps so we don't have interruptions in that case. And I think I've covered most things. So at this point, we will go to we have a rather long list, and so some of these we're going to go through quickly. Some we'll just have to take time to spend on them, so we'll move as quick as we can. Some of you will have to be here for a while because 18 items, I think, so it may take us a while to get there. So first item, we're going to open the public hearing for case number PER 23-6, preliminary plat extension request, Estates at Verandas Phase 3. Does anybody need to declare any prior communication on this item? Okay, Mr. King.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman, Commissioners, we're going to lead off today with a couple of what should be routine extension requests. And with that in mind, I'm going to try to go through this pretty quickly. This being Phase 3 of Estates at Verandas. The main thing I want to emphasize for the Planning Commission is, of course, where it is and what it is. And note that there are 2 phases that have already been approved and have been platted with recorded plats. This is Phase 3 that we're talking about here. You see the color coding up there. Phase 3 is what we're discussing here. Quick aerial image. Some background information so that you know that those other 2 phases have been approved. The City of Fairhope, because this is in their planning jurisdiction, they have already approved an extension as well. I have your recommendation here on screen with some background information that we probably don't need to go into detail about. I will clarify very quickly, though, that even though this is in Fairhope's planning jurisdiction, as staff, we can administratively approve a preliminary plat in that scenario, but in terms of an extension, we have to bring it to the Planning Commission. Background information there is on screen in terms of a condition of approval. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to answer questions.
Okay, anybody have any questions for staff? Okay. And do we have anybody signed up to speak on this? I don't have my list updated yet.
There's no public hearing
No
on
public
this,
hearing
so
on
I don't
this
think there
anyway.
was even an option to
That's
say.
right, no public hearing.
All right, I'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion, we approve the extension.
Mr. Davis made a motion to approve.
Seconded.
Mr. Seibert seconded the motion. Any questions, comments on the motion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, next case is case PER 23-8, which is another preliminary plat extension request for Gulf Shores RV Resort.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, do you need to do your, do we need to do the notification
Does
again?
anybody need declaring prior communication on this item? All right, go ahead, sir.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman, Commissioner, same situation here. What should be a pretty routine extension request. In this case, we do have a quite large RV park, as you see here, and you see its location in the unzoned area of Baldwin County, very near Gulf Shores. The primary thing to call to the attention of the Planning Commission in this case is that there may be the possibility when they're building Phase 2, there may be the possibility that the Baldwin County Highway Department may require them to revisit the traffic impact study. If that is the case, then we'll bring this back before the Planning Commission if needed. Otherwise, we have for you a routine extension request. The conditions of approval up here are procedural in nature. Happy to explain if there are any questions. Otherwise, I won't comment further and invite the Planning Commission to ask any questions.
Okay, any questions for staff? Okay, if not, I'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion, we approve the extension.
All right,
with
Mr.
the
Davis made a
conditions.
motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Booyer seconded the motion. Any questions or comments on the motion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, our next case is another extension, is case CSP 22-22 Coastal Church Extension. Does anybody need to clear any prior communication on this item? Ms. Rhodes?
All right. All right, this is just a 6-month extension request in order to receive their building permit. They were approved back in October for their commission site plan, and the conditions of approval are on the screen.
Okay. Any questions for staff? Okay, I'll entertain a motion on this one.
I'll make a motion that we approve the extension.
Okay, Mr. Mulks made a motion to approve. Do you have a second?
Seconded.
Mr. Seibert seconded the motion. Any question or comments? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. We'll go to our next case. It'll be a public hearing for, we'll open a public hearing now for case number P-18004. This is the Bella Sarah Gardens. Does anybody need to declare any prior communication on this item? Okay, Matthew?
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're not going to go over this whole presentation because we went over it last time and it was tabled, so I'm just going to hit these introductory overview slides. This is an event venue that was approved of the conditional use. We've gotten many complaints over the past 2 years. Y'all heard it 2 months ago. It is a little bit of a complicated case. Y'all tabled it for further consideration. You can see it's on an RSFE lot, which is residential single-family estate. The whole community really is composed of larger estate-size lots. This has become a pretty substantial wedding/event venue over the years, and you can see those photos there. At this time, I'm going to just jump now to where we ended last time, which was a possible recommendation regarding those conditional uses. And again, I'm happy to go back to any other information that we had in that report last time. We discussed this a little bit during a work session, and the main issues that we've encountered are, number one, the noise. That seems to be the overarching issue. And then number two, the fact that this is no longer has really a primary use or its principal use as a residence or residential. I believe when the applicant initially pursued this as a conditional use, it was the applicant's primary residence at that time. So here's the proposed changes as in terms of where they stand right now. I'm going to read these out. So number 2, the principal use of the property shall remain residential. We're removing that, and we're saying the residence on the property shall not be used for short-term overnight rentals, which includes overnight stays by any event participants. Number 3, the applicant shall keep on file with the Planning and Zoning Department a copy of the current license agreement or contract used by the applicant to lease the facility. This is beneficial because you see what's really taking place in that agreement in terms of the scope of what's permitted and things of that nature. We're proposing to, and I didn't highlight this right here, I should have. In fact, let me do that just so there's no confusion. We're amending these hours of operation. Initially, when this was approved years ago, it was for concluding at 8, and then at some point it was bumped up to 10, and then it was reverted back to 9, so it's been all over the place. So hours of operation will be changed to 9 p.m. on Friday through Sunday and 8 p.m. on Monday through Thursday for music and all event activities with the exception of cleanup. We're, again, removing the requirement that there shall be no sound of music from the property lines because we believe that's just unenforceable. That can depend on weather conditions and everything else. But we've instead modified 9 to say no amplification of music outside of the enclosed structures, and when amplified music is used within an enclosed structure, the doors of the structure shall not be left open. And then number 10, applicant understands and consents to Baldwin County Code Enforcement officers visiting the site during an event to ensure the conditions above are strictly observed, and that failure to observe the conditions will result in a recommendation to revoke the conditional use approval, which would have to come back before this planning commission. Mr. Chairman?
Okay, any questions for staff?
Just one, it's a typo in number 3, the second line, contract used by the applicant, not be the applicant.
Great catch, thank you, sir.
Any other questions? Okay. I know we had a public hearing on this before, but I know the applicant is here, so I'm going to let her come up and speak.
Excuse me, I need to apologize. When I first began this a few years ago, it was like every 3 or 4 months, and I must have missed that because the meeting was so tumultuous. I must have missed it. We're going to come back in June because I didn't get a letter, and I didn't know until Centennial Bank's lawyer just called me. So I apologize. I was working. To begin with, I want to say one thing to be very clear. When you're driving down the interstate, you see a speeding sign. It tells you how fast to go. If I would have received any type of correspondence, I would have gladly been more vigilant with the sound of the music. Since coming in front of all of you, I have been very vigilant. I have made changes, and I would have had this presented by my lawyer if I'd known I was going to be here today. But number one, I was going to meet before the next meeting and say no subwoofers. No subwoofers are allowed at Belisara. That's a huge thing that will decrease the sound. Number two, I've been more vigilant. Didn't know the neighbors were extremely upset with me. I was busy doing my job. I have purchased a decibel reader. I can take that decibel reader, I can take it to the property line. I can get in my car, or one of the employees' cars. I can drive the perimeter to see all of my neighbors. When the neighbors are playing music at 9:30, 10, 10:30, 11 o'clock, I document that, and I can play the audio. It's extremely loud, so it is not me going past 9 o'clock. I now stop at 5 minutes till 9. The one thing that I do want to beg forgiveness for is that if I had been prepared and known it was today, the doors to the veranda, it wraps around the building. If you haven't been to Belisara, you don't know that there are 9 antique doors. They're very, very tall. There's 9. 2 I cannot keep closed. It says exit. 1 goes to the bathroom. It has an arm on it. Can't keep that closed. It's a legal exit with the sign by the fire department. Second door to the left side of the veranda is the smoking section. Can't keep those closed either. It has an arm. I literally tried the front entrance, 2 employees standing there. It's physically impossible to open and close those doors. It's like this. Can't get in and out. So I would beg forgiveness. We will try to keep everything closed except that main entrance. Physically impossible. Once again, if I had known I was going to be here today, I would have had maybe a video. I could have shown you the dress trying to get out. There's physically impossible. You just cannot keep the main entrance closed. So everything can be closed. The arm will close them automatically. Smoking section, bathroom door. The remaining 9 doors, the main one to the entrance into the courtyard, you can't do it. I had 2 staff stand there. You can't. It's like popcorn popping in a machine. You can't do it. You're going to slap people in the face. They're going to go out that door to go to the 2 bars and come back in. So if you want to table it again, I can bring you a video so you can see these doors, or I would invite you to come out. It's just a physical impossibility, or I'd be happy to do it. You can't have that many people in a ballroom and that one door pop in and out. So I don't know what to tell you gentlemen, lady, I'm so sorry. I can't agree to that tonight. It's physically impossible. And I will come back and bring you a video or invite you to come look at the venue itself. So I'm sorry. Oh, with Hulu, I've gotten agreements from them to come back for season 2. Absolutely. They will not do anything else in the courtyard that's live music, and they will stop 5 minutes till 9. Anybody that plays music around the perimeter of my property, I have people that now will go around and record it, and they have a decibel reader, so I will prove that it's not me. The last thing, I had an occurrence on April 22nd, 2023, which I have documentation for, but I'm not ready because I was not ready today. Caitlin Stuckey is a bride. The bass machine from a neighbor was so loud and deafening that I had to call the police. Couldn't hear anything. Bass is something that hits your chest. It reverberates loudly. You can't talk. All you hear is a bass. You hear no lyrics. It was so loud, the entire 100 guest count in the chapel was mortified. And I actually have a recording of that, which is hard to do, but it was so loud, an employee recorded that. So I have documentation, a police report. Once again, didn't know I was coming in, so I don't have that ready for you. But that's basically retaliation. And music plays till 10:30, 11, 11:30 at night, all the time. There's gunshots. There's all types of things, but yet people still come to Belisara because they want to be there. And when they hear a neighbor do something or shoot off one of those cannons with the smoke coming over the fence, they laugh because they know that that's simply the personality of some of the people in the South. So I'm sorry, once again, please reconsider that front door entrance. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay. All right, do we need to open up any of the other in your mind? Or is that just, you gonna let me do that, make that decision?
I'll let you make that decision. It might not, I probably would not be a bad thing before making a decision, as long as it's clear that we're not here to
Yeah.
rehear everything that we heard 2
Let
months
me
ago.
say it this way, there are 4 of you that signed up to speak that are opposed to this. If you have something different than what you spoke to, if you spoke the last time, then if you have something different, fine. Or if you didn't speak the last time and you came to this meeting, I'll allow you to speak. So I'm gonna call you out, and you're willing to come up to speak, but please don't repeat what we've heard. We still have all that in our minds from the last time we met. So I'll call out Sam Wilkes. Do you want to speak? Yes. Okay.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Sam Wilkes with Ryan Wilkes PC Attorneys, here on behalf of Bill and Dawn Mitch. They own the property adjacent to the west of the wedding venue. They've been there for over 30 years. They've seen this from the beginning start as a outdoor wedding venue and transition into a full-fledged business with drone videos and filming TV shows and holding concerts for American Idol contestants. It started with a toe in the door, and it's slowly crept and pulled the doors off the hinges. It seems, reading through the record, it seems the response from the commission or the staff's continual revisement of these conditions to cater to the business. But I would just like to say we have to remember that this is a conditional use permit, as y'all know. Y'all shall revoke it if it's incompatible with the uses in the surrounding areas and it results in any nuisance. There's substantial evidence of nuisance. There's several complaints, and they've been verified by staff, and I just keep reading in the record that it's asking for forgiveness from the property owner. Well, this isn't an inherent right as Bellicera LLC to own this property and operate a business. The conditions, the benchmarks keep moving, and she keeps asking for forgiveness. She has every right to go to any part of the county, unzoned part of the county, or properly zoned part of the county and operate a business. These neighbors have chose this area because it's residential, family, quiet, country living, and now they're surrounded by concerts and TV shows and filming and loud music with consistent violations. And I've heard that the county's not in the business of doing decibel readers, and y'all don't have time to be bothered with this. So really, I'm having trouble understanding where the issue is. I mean, the experiment's over. She's had her chance. It's been 9 years. She's got no hardship. This is a residential property. It's the duty of the Planning Commission to enforce the zoning ordinance, which should protect the surrounding property owners who bought this property as a residential dwelling. And they're incurring the burden of this use, which is not an inherent right. So, and I've always been told when you abuse your privileges, you lose your privileges. And the abuse is well documented. So we ask that the commission revokes this conditional use permit.
Okay. Thank you. Marty Blanchard. Dorothy Faircloth.
Hi. Hello. Thank you for considering helping us. Yeah, from the beginning, she promised that she could abide by all the conditions that were required of her. She promised that she could keep the music where it wouldn't disturb the neighborhood. And now she says she can't even close the doors. Well, she can't do it, but why do we have to suffer because she can't do it, can't comply? And she blames all the music on the neighbors, or some of the music on the neighbors. Well, there are times where some of the neighbors abuse us also. They do. But we know when she has an event, her lights are all on, and we can tell where the music is coming from. And she can't slough it off onto other neighbors. It's not fair. She's not taking responsibility for what she's doing. If she can't close those main doors, maybe she has to not use those main doors. But I do believe it makes a difference if she has the doors open, because we can hear that amplified music. She wasn't supposed to have outside amplified music. Now we're saying we can't keep the music to the property lines, which I understand that, except that there's reasonable music volume. I have a neighbor who apologized that she couldn't come in April to the meeting, and she said she's a runner. She knows where the event is, and she knows when there's an event, and she says she can hear the music all the way to her home, and she lives on the other end of the subdivision, which is probably half a mile or maybe 3/4 of a mile away. It's not just localized. And by the way, she talks about the subwoofers and whatever, but there's a lot of bass coming out of there. And it is, you can hear the pounding. I can hear it in my home. I can hear it at times, not every time, not every time. And she does use, at times, there are horns. You know, it's not just violins and guitars. It's other kinds of music, too. Anyway, thank you. Please help us.
All right, folks, again, I'm going to repeat this. Some of this, please know that we know and understand that there's a real issue with the noise. I'm not telling you not to speak, but you just don't have to keep telling us that. So if you've got something else that's an issue, Bill Mitch. All right, Marvin Radcliffe. Never mind. No, I'm sorry, I've got some mixed in from for the next agenda item, sorry. All right, so that's it. All right, so Planning Commission members, that's all we have as far as anybody else that I didn't call on that just has to say something on this? All right. All right, any questions for staff? Matthew, you got anything else to add?
No, though I think that the possible recommendation that we have shown here, the removing of the audible noise from the property line, was kind of contingent on swapping it for the amplified music and keeping those structures, keeping the doors closed. And if she says that that's not feasible, that kind of puts us back to a position where I don't know that we have a solution that we would be in a position to recommend as staff.
Mr. Chairman, would it be possible, can I ask the applicant a question? Can we?
Yes. I haven't closed the public hearing on this.
All right. Robin,
Yes, sir.
Notwithstanding any frustration regarding communication and all that, kind of on a postage stamp, explain to me again the issue with being unable to close those exterior doors. Not the exit ones, I get that. Those have to be.
We can.
I'm talking about the front doors that you have maintained cannot be closed. Is it a matter of they can't be closed because people are going in and out?
Right.
Because the bar is outside?
Right. So
then why not move the bar inside so that those doors could be closed?
the ballroom is legally by the fire department can only seat a certain number of people. The courtyard has seating areas and hanging beds.
Right.
And 2 bars that the Department of Public Health built according to the standards. They're outside with the triple sinks, the sanitizers.
Right.
So there's no way to move that inside. It's not legal. The ballroom itself, if I'm the ballroom, this is the porch. This is the veranda. You've got 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 doors. They're antique and they're very tall. These can all be closed.
Right.
1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. The main one here, it's physically impossible when you have a herd of people inside. Say I have 100 people. The most would be 120 inside. 15 tables times 8 chairs is 120. We can close all these doors. If they go to the smoking section, it's going to sling shut. I can't.
I understand that, but what I'm hearing you say is that the doors could be closed.
Oh, they do close.
But, no.
Yeah.
That the doors could be closed.
Yes.
But it would be, shall we say, inconvenient to close them because they're going to consistently be opened and closed as people go outside.
No, sir, it's not inconvenient. It's physically impossible to have this many people in a square footage on only one door they're going to go in and out of. You can't get them in and out fast enough. They're all going to exit. We've already focused on the front entrance already. I did that immediately. Everything's closed. I can lock the exterior doors. We've tried to have 2 people there. You just can't. You've got people coming in with food and drinks constantly and people in dresses. If I have 2 staff members, it's a door that's going to open. You have to have 2 people. They're like this.
I know.
And we can't do it because so many people, they're constantly coming and going. It's a physical impossibility. You just cannot. You can't open the door fast enough and close it, then you're shutting it in somebody's face. People are going left to right constantly. They're getting food, they're getting drink, they're getting coffee, they're going to the bathroom. It's just physically impossible. All the other 8 doors are closed, but it's physically impossible to keep people in a building you just physically cannot do it. I want to do it, I tried to do it, but you can't, because people spill drinks, and then we're slamming the doors in their face. Those two doors have a little door thing that goes down, and they can flow freely and safely through that door, but as far as it being safe from my emergency exit, it can stay open. It's deemed by the fire department to be open. Even with two people, I can't herd people in and out fast enough. And I'm not trying to be non-compliant. I tried to do it, and I couldn't do it because people are moving in and out too fast. If you have 120 people, the doors are about this wide.
All right, I got it.
I'm sorry,
Thank
I don't
you.
know how to explain it any further. I'm
Yeah,
confused about that.
I obviously don't understand it then, so thank you.
It's just one door.
Okay. I know my take on this in the future. I'm not a volunteer. I'm not going to be volunteering any approvals for any venues in residential areas. This has been the second one that we've had for a wedding venue with this type of issue. It's just a bad situation. You obviously have a very successful business, so do the other, but it's in the middle of a residential section, and what we're dealing with, person telling us he can't stop the music, and we've got people complaining about the music. So, and this has been approved prior to most everybody on this planning commission. Now we're left dealing with the issues.
I do.
Diane?
It seems to me like the very first conditional approval, things have changed. And some of the things have been approved, and some of the things have caused problems, like what she's talking about. And I don't know if the original structure changed, and that's why you can't close the doors. I don't know all that, but it's not our job to find the solution. But everyone has the right to quiet enjoyment of their homes, and this is intruding on that, in my opinion.
I know it's kind of my job to provide you all some guidance here. And this is difficult. I do think, one option would be to go back to the original approval provisions. I think originally it was limited to weddings when it was originally approved. The owner lived on the property, which I think there's a kind of a general understanding that there's a little bit more buy-in in terms of the impact to the neighborhood when the owner has their permanent residence at the property. And it was limited to 8 p.m. on its original approval years and years ago as well. And I get the impression it was probably used for much smaller weddings too. And then over time, this has grown to a much more substantial operation where, like you said, you can't. I mean, with 120 people moving in and out, I can understand that capacity, essentially the doors are constantly open, even if you have someone closing them after every person, because we're just operating at that level of movement through those entrance and exits. But maybe that's a sign that this has surpassed what it was intended for in that original approval. It is interesting that it was originally pitched by the applicant as a garden wedding venue, basically in her backyard. And it's definitely functioning at a much higher intensity today than that original approval.
Can I say that since I've gotten in trouble and been called in front of the board and didn't receive notification, the volume has to be cut in half. I mean, it's like cut way down, way down. Saturday we have a string quartet coming in that's in the ballroom. I mean, I have gotten like a Nazi soldier out there. The volume is way, way down. And if the neighbors were to be honest, it has not been nowhere near as loud as before I came in. I have cracked down like a Nazi soldier. It's nowhere near that loud. And if the bride gets mad at me, I'm like, look, it's quieter. It's so much quieter. I don't know how to make that clearer. I didn't realize the music was that loud until the hearing happened. So the music shouldn't be as much of a nuisance to my neighbors now that I'm aware of their irritation about it. It's like way down. It's like, if I go up to the bridal, you can hardly hear it at my house. You can hardly hear it. And as far as residency, my grandson and my daughter live in the house, and I still have residency. I have, my driver's license still says it, and I spend probably more time there than anywhere because I'm constantly on site, doing everything almost myself because I do a lot of the maintenance in the entire garden. So the music itself has to be cut in half. There's no way it's as loud as it was when I first got called in front of you. There's just no way, because I knew that this was on the line, and I've been very vigilant, stopping at 5 minutes till 9, and I can videotape that we stop. and
Mr.
it's not
Chairman,
us.
we do have a busy agenda tonight.
Yeah.
Here's what my recommendation is that I'm going to give Ms. Robin the benefit of the doubt that she misunderstood that this was back on the agenda tonight. We table it to the July agenda, and this week, we expect you to reach out to our office and schedule a meeting, and I want, with that schedule, your proposal, and we will meet with our legal counsel very fervently and communicate. I would recommend your legal counsel's involved as well, and we will come, at next meeting, we will not open a public hearing. Maybe we allot maybe 5 minutes for Ms. Robin to present what she's come up with, and we will have a recommendation out the gate, and we won't spend more than 10 minutes on this, and we'll keep moving.
Okay? I like it.
I don't think that's fair to my community.
All right, planning commission members? I'm going to close the public hearing then, and we'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we table this agenda item, case
Until July.
18004, to our July meeting.
Okay, Mr. Mullis made a motion to table till July meeting. Do I have a second?
Second.
That was Bill?
Yeah.
All right, any comments or questions on the motion?
So just to be clear, when this comes back up in July, based on the motion, when this comes back up in July, it's going to be a combination of whatever happens with Matt, staff, and Ms. Robin regarding these. All right, the only thing I would suggest is that, at some point, revocation's got to be on the table. And it's got to be publicly on the table, because if we come back in July and I know Matt says we're going to spend 10 minutes, but when we get to minute 12 and somebody says table, the roof may blow off. Because that's going to be the fourth month in a row of it getting kicked down the road. So just, at some point, revocation's going to have to be on the table.
Any other questions or comments? All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. Go to our next item, which is case number TA-23002, Planning District 39. We'll open a public hearing on this item. Does anybody need to clear any prior communication on this? Mr. Brown?
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a text amendment for the recently voted in Planning District 39, and we'll just kind of dive through this pretty quickly, and you can pause me if you have questions. This is, again, just an amendment to the zoning ordinance, not impacting any of the other regulations. Here's going to be an overview of this presentation. It is pretty lengthy in terms of content. We're going to talk about the timeline of how we got to where we are today. We're going to talk about the common local provisions that y'all have already seen a bunch of times before, so we're not going to spend a lot of time on those, but then we're going to spend a little bit more time on some of the newer local provisions that Planning District 39 is proposing, plus some priorities that they highlighted. We're going to look at the map. We're going to look at a couple full ordinance changes that are tied into this. We'll have the staff recommendation, then we'll have the public hearing. And as a reminder, in the public hearing, we expect to have several probably special requests that come from the floor. Also, Mr. Chairman, we do have a new person, Fabia, operating the table. So if you're having trouble, let us know. If there's something not communicating correctly there, we'll definitely work on getting that resolved. So just remember, this is a citizen-driven process. It's governed by statute. In this particular case, the citizens petitioned and proposed a boundary on August 2nd, 2022. They collected those signatures of registered voters in the district and had those submitted on November 16th, 2022. An election was set for February 7th, 2023. The yes votes prevailed, 437 to 306 no votes. The next step then was the appointment of a citizen advisory committee. 5 members were appointed to that. Raise your hand if you're here tonight and you were one of the members of the advisory committee. I think we have 4 of the 5, and there's a lot of time that goes into that effort. 8 weeks in a row. I don't think we had a single meeting that lasted probably less than 4 hours, quite frankly. So a lot of diligence on their part, and we appreciate that. So that first meeting was March 30th. Again, we met every week after that until May 18th. We had a unanimous recommendation for the proposals that y'all see in front of you. That brings us to today's date, June 6th, that has the recommendation in front of y'all to make a recommendation now to the county commission. And then we expect it to go to the county commission the second meeting in July right now. That's what we're targeting. It could potentially also go in August. One thing to highlight, there's been a temporary moratorium, 180-day moratorium in place for basically major projects is the best way to think about that, and that automatically terminates August 7th. So that's kind of the timeline that everybody's working against to try and get this in place. All right, let's talk about the common local provisions. Gonna fly through these. Landscape buffers for major projects abutting primary roads. We've seen this in pretty much all of our recent planning districts. Special landscape buffers for certain intense major projects abutting public roads. Again, that's mini warehouse, RV parks, things of that nature. So that has been a common provision, and that's in here. I have the agenda packet number, by the way, on the bottom of your slide if you did want to turn to that at all in your agenda packet. Sidewalks along major roads. This has actually had a slight tweak to it from what we've normally done, and this is only required for major projects within one of our activity nodes, which we'll talk about later on, or if it's on a parcel that immediately butts another parcel where there is an existing sidewalk. So we're not saying anywhere in the entire district that's required, but just at those major activity nodes. The wetlands set aside in common areas, very common. We have had some input concerns about the use of jurisdictional here, since there was just a Supreme Court decision about this, but this is where it was when the committee voted on it. A stream buffer requirement along the streams that was set at 100 feet, but we built in an automatic exemption or a variance when a lot is too small to accommodate that 100-foot process, because we don't want to just have a slew of cases that have to come before our variance board for those. Special parking requirements to reduce impervious areas. That's a common provision in these new districts. Lower density requirements for mobile home parks and auto convenience markets or gas stations being limited to B4 districts. Again, very common local provisions. Commercial building facade requirements, basically saying you can't have just a metal front facade on the portion visible from the public right of way. Okay, so those were the common ones we've seen many times. New local provisions and priorities. The first was in regards to solid waste and trash management. Now, most of this is common sense, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. The Baldwin County Solid Waste Department, soon to be Baldwin County Solid Waste Authority, has a lot of enforcement in these areas, but this kind of dialed in on a couple things that will allow us to partner with them when issues come up to resolve these. It also placed some specific requirements for RV parks, manufactured home parks, and other multiple occupancy projects, because currently there's, you know, they're just putting some trash receptacles on there, and this was a big priority for the citizens on the Citizens Advisory Committee. There's also now a requirement for a major project, again, this is just Planning District 39, that they actually show that container location for a major project, and they provide a little bit of buffering around that. Also a provision about not storing bulky waste on the right-of-way, so that way we can help the Solid Waste Department resolve those issues. Okay, so activity nodes. We've seen these with the recent districts, but they're unique to every district, so I was going to spend a little bit of separate time on this. We looked at 4 intersections, County Road 13 and 32, State Route 181 and County Road 32, US 98 and Greeno Road, and US 98 and Highway 181. You'll see those on the map here in a moment. But I'm going to step through them one at a time to show you what these activity nodes accomplish. Essentially, these activity nodes say outside of this radius, you cannot pursue this type of zoning. So RSF3 is one of those examples. It can only be sought within the 2 radiuses shown. RSF4 can only be sought within those 2 radiuses shown. B3 can only be sought within those circles shown there, and a little bit of that at each of the 4 intersections. And then B4 can only be sought at the 2 intersections in those circles shown. Now, here's some language that's pretty common, but we maybe beefed it up a little bit this time to just provide some clarification to make it clear that there are certain districts that just therefore are not available under this current version of the ordinance. That's not to say it will stay that way forever. Zoning is meant to change over time as development patterns occur through a district. But we just have the second paragraph, which I'm going to read into the record. The aforementioned districts were made unavailable on the basis that the uses associated with these districts are best served by municipal governments that have the legal authority and operational capacity to provide for the health, safety, and welfare of citizens in relation to these higher intensity uses. Given the rural nature of Planning District 39, these uses are not appropriate at this time. All right, another new local provision is high-value trees. You have seen something similar once before for District 35. This group went a little bit different direction, but it's still a similar. They identify just 3 types of trees: live oak trees, magnolia trees, and cypress trees as something that they wanted to preserve. They have to be over 25 inches in diameter, which means a tree survey will be required, but it's only for a major project. So this doesn't apply to residential, someone who's building a single-family residence or something like that on a single parcel. But if anybody who's doing something that meets the definition of a major parcel will trigger this requirement. They also built in an automatic exemption. So once they identify these trees, they get a 25% they can remove without any question. And then they can come and petition y'all for an additional 25%. But any of those that they remove, they have to replace with another high-value tree planting. And then it gives some provisions for how those. They also included some parameters to say how close you can get to one of those trees before it's been considered that you've essentially destroyed it. So you might say, oh, we're preserving it, but we're going to build 5 feet from it, and now it's going to die in 2 years. So they define that in the rules themselves. These are the requirements about replanting, and that's all I have on that. It's actually, I think, a really good short version of a tree ordinance that's pretty simple, and so we're kind of interested to see how this works out in Planning District 39. Okay, traffic study requirements. So a big concern that this committee had was traffic and drainage, and it's understandable that's a concern we hear a lot. But some concerns that came up with some of the recent developments in that area and growth rates and the requirements of those traffic studies, and also the fact that we don't actually have a traffic study requirement for, let's say, a Wawa. If a Wawa came up in Planning District 39 and was proposed, and let's say it was properly B4, there's no traffic study requirement in our zoning ordinance for a single site development. So this added some of those, and again, they're pretty significant thresholds. You have to generate a decent number of vehicle trips and peak hours to trigger a traffic study. They also clarified and expanded the time frame they're required to look at intersections because of the size of the county, and also requires some straight line traffic counts. We also clarified how growth rates are determined, because we've seen a consistent pattern where developers are using growth rates like 1%, or we've even had some 0% or say -% growth rates, which we just know is not realistic given the growth we're seeing in the county. So we give some parameters for them to use on those. All right. We have another new local provision for stormwater requirements. We work closely with an engineer who's heavily involved in the the watershed management plans throughout the county. And so these are something that he's kind of promoting as he's gone through these plans, and he's calling them good neighbor stormwater policies. They are used in other states like Georgia to an extent, and we kind of trimmed them down to just 5. They have, of course, more. I'm going to just quickly highlight what these are. For each one in the ordinance, we did something a little bit unique. In the ordinance itself, we say, in layperson terms, here's what's required, here's the benefit, and here's how this differs from the current requirements of the subdivision regulation. So requirement number one is that they have to retain the first 1 inch of runoff during any rain event. And I'm just going to read the benefit. This requirement will help ensure that pollutants settle out in the development stormwater pond and reduce the chances of those pollutants impacting downstream neighbors and ultimately reaching county streams and rivers. Okay, number two was retain runoff from any 85th percentile 24-hour storm. Initially, we weren't sure what that number actually was. It's something you actually have to calculate. And so the engineer did that for us, but we had 1.2 in there. It turns out the final number after the calculation was 1.5 inches, so that's what will be placed there. But here again, the benefit, the requirement will help ensure that pollutants settle out in the drainage basin or other nature-based stormwater features to reduce those reaching our storms and rivers. The next two focus more on volume. Number three is protect the downstream channel by providing extended detention, 24 hours for any 1 year, 24-hour rain event. It turns out they found when they do these studies of the different watersheds that it's not the 500-year storm that damages our rivers, because those go into the floodplains and the floodplains do their jobs, or the floodways. What damages our streams, it's actually the 1 year and 2 year storm events that happen sometimes 5 times a week and can erode our banks quickly. So this is one that helps with some of that detention in those volumes for those frequent smaller storms. Number four, demonstrate that flows are not increased. It's interesting, Buford's not letting me snooze that automatic restart, so we'll see what happens there. Okay, demonstrate that flows are not increased at a downstream point in the drainage basin where the development's on-site drainage areas represent 10% of the downstream drainage basin. Right now, we just say you can't have any downstream adverse impacts, but there's no real way to measure. In fact, usually what we get is just a statement that says no downstream impacts. Well, this sets a point where they have to check that downstream impact for the development. This just encourages them that if they can treat more of the stormwater on site, it may allow them to reduce their infrastructure sizes and actually save some money on the development. And that's all I have on the stormwater requirements. Okay, so new local provision regarding fire access roads. The Alabama Administrative Code adopted the fire code except for one section, and in that section they say it's encouraged, but it's not required. And so this committee wanted to move forward and make it a requirement in Planning District 39, which basically says you have to have 2 accesses whenever development exceeds 30 units. Very common for subdivisions in municipalities. Okay, another local provision. This is, I think, a really neat one. It's very creative. It's not something that's been done anywhere in our zoning ordinance before. It's just a short paragraph, so I'm going to read it. It says, incentivizing certain planned residential developments. There shall be a presumption of appropriateness and compatibility, and staff shall recommend approval as it relates to compatibility issues for a proposed PRD with underlying RSF1 zoning utilizing a net density calculation and basically excluding roads and some wetlands and detention ponds, but shall otherwise meet all requirements of Article 9 of these local provisions. What's this saying is, if someone wants to take 50 acres and then they want to propose a subdivision on there and they subtract the wetlands, they subtract the ponds, they subtract the roads, they can divide what's left over by 30,000 square feet and put that number of units on the property as long as they're then preserving the open space and things like that. This does result in a pretty low density subdivision compared to what you'd normally see out there. So we might find that the developers don't take advantage of it, but it's a step to see if this might be something that is usable by developers. All right, we had a new local provision that had some parcel specific accommodations, and these are actually spelled out in the resolution. We had 2 parcels where the citizens had these requests. One, there's an existing mini warehouse development already being constructed and it's in an area where it didn't make sense to rezone this to B3. And they said, well, we're okay keeping it RA, but we want to know we can continue on with this development. And they're allowed to do that in RA. It's a conditional use. And the committee said, you know what, we're okay saying, you know what, you've already started this here. it's on RA. We would rather you keep this zoned RA instead of B3. So we're willing to remove the conditional aspect of it. They still have to meet all the requirements of the zoning ordinance when they come back with their future phases, though. So it's not waiving anything. It's just saying we're not gonna, we're removing the possibility of saying, no, we don't want a mini warehouse in this. And again, there's already 2 under construction that were grandfathered prior to zoning. The other one is a planned residential development, Laurelbrook, that's near completion. And in this case, D.R. Horton requested that they get approval for RSF2 zoning with a PRD overlay that matches the preliminary plat. This one, they're almost already done with the roads, and it's near completion, and the committee was okay with this one. Okay, a statement on future priorities. We actually spent a lot of time on these 2 issues, but we weren't able to get to a point that made sense for Planning District 39, and really, these are issues that need to be addressed county-wide if they can be addressed. And the first one is maintenance requirements for subdivision stormwater facilities. We all know that that's an issue, and instead of just implementing it in 39 and just having it in one place, we said let's backpedal a little bit and let's see if there's a way to do this countywide, or maybe countywide in the zoned areas if that's the scope of our authority. The second thing was special subdivision requirements to support, and it says lot residential subdivisions, supposed to be large lot residential subdivisions. We actually came up with some draft language on this. Once again, we think that this would be best implemented through the subdivision regulator, continuing to grapple with it, and the committee wanted to make sure there was a clear statement that this is a priority, and they think. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. There's a natural development trend. One that came in, we did find 5 additional properties that are state-owned that conservation resource. And so found this out, I think, yesterday. So committee members, I haven't even gotten a chance to mention it to y'all, but we intended to zone all state-owned conservation properties, conservation resource. That's their appropriate zoning. So we're building that into our proposal for tonight, and look at these other changes coming up as well. The second one that triggers a lot is when a proposed major project is within 200 feet of a residential county, and most of what we do is zoning. So this gets triggered all the time. It's an important trigger, though, because it's going to impact those people that are within 200 feet. So we're just clarifying that major projects within 200 feet of a property that is either zoned or used residential triggers this. However, if this is the only criteria necessitating a commission site plan approval, the planning director may require a commercial site plan, all the same requirements, but no public hearing, so it's a lot faster, in lieu of a commission site plan if either, 1, the applicant agrees to accept a condition on approval limiting the operating hours of the business from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. on all days of the week, or 2, the project involves a change from one use to a new permitted use, and I might need to look at a grammar issue there, though. From one use to a new permitted use with no increase in the cubic footage of the structure. So they're just changing maybe from a pizza place to something else. We want to make it clear that we're not something we're going to bring in front of y'all. They'll still have to get a permit through our department, but it's not triggering any type of major change that the community is probably even going to notice occurs. Okay? One other major one with E, major projects proposing an increase in the gross floor area by 30% or more on a site with existing structures totaling, when considering in combination, 5,000 square feet or more of existing gross floor area. So this still catches if something's over 5,000 and they're still doing an expansion of over 30% or more, it's still going to trigger a commission site plan approval there based on that it's going to take into account that existing square footage. Our hope is to try and maybe trim 10% or 15% of those commission site plans off that are coming in front of y'all, that they're not controversial and probably don't need a public hearing. We have a new provision for speculative rezonings, which basically says if a property gets rezoned and then it doesn't get developed within 5 years, then the county commission may initiate a rezoning process. It still goes through the whole process. There's still the same public notice, public hearing, and then could revert it back to its original zoning. And that's all I have for the full ordinance changes. So our staff recommendation is that you all adopt, or recommend the county commission adopt this resolution with these proposed changes, and that's basically everything prior to this slide. And then we do now have that public hearing, and we know that there will be some special requests. I have a couple slides in. I'm going to hold those, and in case that person comes up with that special request, then I can bring those slides up at that time.
Okay. Any questions for Matthew? Nobody? Okay. All right, I have 4 people signed up. Matt Byrne.
How are you all?
Good.
Good. Matthew, can you bring the map up,
Yes, sir.
please, sir? I'm here about a particular parcel where we at one time had turned in for an RV park on this parcel, and then decided it would be okay to leave it as RA. And I just want to check and make sure it's still.
So
Yep.
this is it right here?
That's it right there, yep.
All right.
And that's inside that circle, so that's the RSF 3 also, is that what you said?
That's correct.
So I didn't have any questions, but I'm here if anybody has a comment on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Doug Ward. Doug Ward. Oh,
I'd like to talk later. I just wanted to see what everybody else was saying first.
all right.
I'm just on the committee and I support, what we're doing and we all to approve it. That's really all I had to say.
Okay. Frank Leatherberry? Same. All right, I did have one in opposition. Marvin Radcliffe?
Good evening, how are you all?
Good evening.
So my father, speaking on behalf of my father, he's the property to the east of this proposed RV park. And I am a builder, I am a developer. I understand that's how it's going with Baldwin County and I'm for it. But truly and honestly, an RV park in that area, there's some estate lots south of it, is completely uncharacteristic of the neighborhood. I'll just leave it at that.
Okay. That's all I had signed up. Is there anybody else that didn't sign up that wishes to speak? Okay. You'll have to come up here. Give us your name.
Lyman Dykes, and I have a question about number 2 and number 3 on your proposal, Matt. Can you pull those up, please?
Number 2 and number 3 of the...
That was on the, on your resolution.
Oh, yes, sir.
Okay, I see. That first resolution right there, my question is where has the, I've just gone brain dead all of a sudden, the public hearing, have we had a public hearing on either one of those items?
That's taking place right now.
Pardon?
That's taking place right now. This is the public hearing on those 2 items.
Okay, and I totally disagree with that right there because this committee just decided to zone this land, and now this is violating the zoning thing, taking y'all's rights away from y'all because it's supposed to have a public hearing and it's supposed to be published, and it hadn't been published.
Yes, sir. This public hearing has been published. It's met all the requirements of the state law and the zoning ordinance. And I want to point out that we're not rezoning anything with this. They are going to have to use the zoning that's established on the map. So this is not a rezoning for either of these properties. It's establishing the initial zoning on the map.
That just says it's to be approved, permit as used.
So
you're saying shall be permitted.
In RA, or in every zoning district, a certain use type is either P, permitted, or C, conditional. In RA, a mini warehouse and boat and RV storage is C, conditional, instead of P, permitted. Or or it can be disallowed completely, okay? So they're just, as part, the Citizens Advisory Committee is essentially creating the zoning for this district as part of this process, and they're creating the zoning for this parcel to say, for this parcel, it is P permitted.
This partial was voted on by the committee to be RA. The traditional way to do that is for them to come back and request a rezoning. And in which case, right, you have your public hearing, and everybody gets to speak on it, good or bad, gets to speak on it, and then the decision's made. This looks like you just skipped a step and just went straight to permitting this.
Yeah, so there's just a misunderstanding here. It is RA, we're not changing it from RA. They could apply for this under RA. There's no, it's on the map as RA. It's just changing, and they're gonna have to come back in front of y'all with a commission site plan application for this mini warehouse storage. It just won't be a conditional analysis, it will be a standard commission site plan analysis where you check to make sure the landscape buffers are there and everything like that.
Why wouldn't we do it the traditional way? Why would we make exceptions on these two?
This citizen came and requested this at the advisory committee, and the advisory committee felt that it was appropriate and as part of the citizen-driven process.
The advisory committee was formed to zone District 39. They have done that and done a very good job of zoning it. Now you pop this up by saying this is for approval. I totally disagree.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, sir. All right. Does anybody have any questions? Anything on any of the items that Matthew went over? I got one, and it's for our environmental. Just real quickly, on wetlands, did that catch you by surprise?
Yeah.
All right, be ready. We say that jurisdictional wetlands have to be in common areas, and then we say man-made wetlands are excluded. Where do non-jurisdictional wetlands fall?
Non-jurisdictional wetlands are grady ponds or man-made ponds that have, do not meet the criteria of a jurisdictional wetland. So man-made and non-jurisdictional to me are not the same, but they fall in the category of non-jurisdictional, you know.
Okay. And I don't see them as the same. I understand they can be the same, but they don't necessarily be.
They're not always the same, but they fall in the category of.
I didn't want it to fall through the crack, and because there are a lot of developers come across this item with non-jurisdictional wetlands, and I didn't know if it was clear that it's excluded from this common area or if it's to be in common areas.
We protect those as a stormwater management facility, so they are protected in our ordinance.
Okay.
Good question.
Any other questions? All right. A lot to.
So, Mr. Chairman, as part of the public hearing, let me go ahead, and I guess these property owners aren't here, but they did submit formal requests to us. I'm going to just highlight these real quick.
Okay.
This first one is regarding Highway 32 Business Park. We had several people submit requests requesting that this be done as M1, and interestingly enough, their covenants and restrictions cite M1 of our zoning ordinance to state what can be in there, even though it was unzoned when this was developed. We zoned it RR because we were concerned about the landscape buffer requirements for M1 that would really be restrictive on these small parcels. There's one owner who's still very concerned about that and wants it to be M1, and we don't really have a concern one way or the other per se. We thought RR was a good approach, but one way could be to do M1 and then or RR and just make it clear that the landscape buffers maybe would be limited to the platted building setbacks on a site like this. So anyways, they said they're out of the country right now, and so they can't be here they couldn't be here at the meeting tonight, but they did submit a formal request. And if y'all want, you can just say, listen, staff, y'all move forward with what you think is most appropriate here. They've already been given RR, which is like a rural industrial type designation.
Okay.
And then the second one, So that's a zoom up of that site right there. Second one is regarding the South Bend subdivision. This came from D.R. Horton, and this is just their email. I don't think they're here tonight. They just wanted to submit a formal objection, and they don't know what they want to request at this point. They requested 10 years from the advisory committee, but they just wanted to make part of the record an objection to the base community zoning because they feel like that limits them down the road if they can't complete the project in 4 years. But they're not actually requesting anything specific tonight because they're not really sure what their appropriate request is. So that actually ended up being a little bit easier than I expected in terms of possible inquiries from the audience.
Okay. All right, this will be a recommendation to the county commission, so if you don't have any other questions or comments, you need to, if you want to address the two items that Matthew just pointed out, then you need to include that in the motion.
Mr. Chairman, I will make a motion that we recommend to the county commission the approval of the rules and regulations that will fall under the ordinance for Planning District 39, consistent also with the two additional items that Matthew mentioned.
Are you, the two items he mentioned, are you asking them to go with what they originally have mapped, or you?
Consistent with what's currently mapped on those two pieces of land.
Is that good, Matthew?
That's fine.
Okay. Mr. Boogers made the motion to recommend approval to the county commission. Have a second?
I second it.
I heard Mr. Davis. All right. Any questions or comments now? All in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. It's an open public hearing now for case number PUD 23-7. This is a Sunset Ridge Mobile Home Park.
Sorry, we got so many, it's taking me a minute to find it. Oh, here we go.
Does anybody need to declare any prior communication on this item? Ms. Mitchell?
It's like presentation roulette. How far we get before it shuts down? 30 minutes, okay. All right. So this is for a 44-unit mobile home park. And it is just to the west of Silver Hill on Highway 104. It is in Plan District 14 where they have not implemented zoning, but this is the one where they will vote on June 6th. All roads inside will remain private. A traffic study was not required, and that was confirmed by Michael Smith with AlDOT. This is a view, the location. Utility letters have all been provided, including water from the town of Silver Hill. Fire protection, they did the flow test results and everything, and the fire chief signed off on it. Drainage improvements have been required, and so there's a pond, as you can see there, and the post flows are reduced from the pre-flow rates. And there is one condition of approval. There are two existing residences on the site, and so we are asking that those not be sold. You know, they can't be broken out from the whole RV park and sold, and that if they do anything, like if they were to tear them down and put a mobile home park there instead, or a mobile home there instead, they would have to go through a site plan modification, so that they are allowed to remain, but they, like I said, they're part of the park, cannot be separated out. And so that brings us to the, we recommend approval. One, they will need AlDOT approval for access to 104, so they're still going through that process. And two, the one I just mentioned about the two residential structures not being modified or sold without going through the subdivision process. That's it.
Okay. Any questions for staff? Okay. Either Aaron or Collins or Jared Landry, either one of you got, both of you? I'll let you choose if you need to both speak, or.
How y'all doing tonight?
Good.
Aaron Collins, SC Civil. I'm really here just to answer any questions you got. We did notify our client about the situation with the existing houses, so he knows.
He understands?
He understands. So if you guys got any questions, I also have Jared Landry, the engineer on this project, with me as well.
Okay. All right, any questions for the engineers on this project? All right, thank you, guys. Just hang close. Andrew? You got what you need? Okay. All right. Anybody else that wish to speak to this that sign up? All right. I have one question for staff. As we get a lot of these, particularly RVs, I haven't seen many mobile homes. This odd, we got 2 on the agenda tonight, and they're private roads. That means the developer or the owner of this, because he rents these lots out, is going to be responsible for maintenance of the roads. I've always wondered, how do we ensure that he maintains those roads? What happens if 15 years from now there's potholes all over it? He could care less. How do we ensure that those roadways are maintained? Because the county's not interested. They're not maintaining them. Do we have any way of enforcing maintenance on someone? It really kind of goes with, I guess, same thing with our detention ponds issue that we deal with, that it's not the county's responsibility, but maybe I'm asking a question and they don't have an answer, but
Well, you're asking a question that hasn't been asked before in recent years, because you're right, we don't see, interestingly enough, many mobile home parks. I think the answer is, and maybe I can follow up with an email to y'all, but there are maintenance requirements in our subdivision regulations regarding infrastructure. There's just not a really clear enforcement mechanism for them, but we have had similar situations like this where a stormwater facility was filled by a resident in a subdivision kind of like this, a development kind of like this. One of the ditches was filled, and we went back and were able to enforce our subdivision requirements based on the recorded plat and the owner's covenant that they're going to abide by our subdivision regulations. And so there's an enforcement mechanism there if it were to get way out of hand. It's just not maybe as clear and simple as we would all like.
We can look into that for y'all too with legal and see what the latest and greatest way to handle that is from a county perspective also.
okay. I just see, for some reason, I see it differently when it hangs on the guy that's creating this mobile, because he's not selling it. There's nobody else going to be involved. The renters don't really have a say, in my opinion, but he's the only guy we can go after. But no need to hold us up for that.
I have a question. What will be the road surface that is proposed here?
They do have to meet county standards for like they have to be paved with either asphalt or cement. You can't do gravel anymore in a mobile home park.
So it is paved?
Yes.
And garbage is at each front of each piece, or do they?
Right, with mobile homes, it's usually assumed that they have the carts, individual carts.
Okay. All right. Any other questions for staff?
Could they petition to the county to take over maintenance of the roadway in the future?
No, it's usually written on the plat that they cannot be turned over. They must be privately maintained, and there, like I said, there's usually a note on the site plan that says they will not be maintained by the county, specifically.
Any other questions? I'll close the public hearing if I have not done so, and would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve PUD 2307, condition to approve conditions outlined by staff.
Okay, Mr. Bullock has made a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, Mr. Booger, second the motion. Any questions or comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Right behind it, we have our other mobile home park. This is will be open public hearing for case number PUD 23-8, Palm Park West. Mr. King? Does anybody need to declare any prior communication on this item? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So very similar to the prior case. But Chairman and Commissioners, I wanted to just take just a quick moment here and just recognize Mary Booth. I'm presenting several of her items tonight. She will be officially separated from the county in retired status at midnight tonight. And so if there's anything wrong with this slideshow, it's her fault. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. So what we have for you here, and y'all, we're going to apologize again. We have about 30 minutes left of that notation up here on screen about a restart. So we'll try to work through it here. But what we have for you here is a 14-unit mobile home park called Palm Park West. We're going to give you an enlargement of that site plan here in just a moment. You can see staff recommending approval. Background information on the site is here. Just a reminder again, Planning District 14. This is ahead of the zoning referendum, which is next week. This is asking for 14 mobile home spaces, mobile home lots. You see all the basic information right there, and our colleagues with the SE Civil are also with us here today for this case. Of course, currently unzoned. And as you see the area here within Planning District 14 where the area is located, and we'll show you the area again on South Boulevard. This is just east of where South Boulevard turns to the south and becomes Bohemian Hall Road. I have an aerial image here. And Commissioners, you may not see it on the site plan, so I'll point it out here. You notice there is an existing unit on site, but that is captured in the site plan. And our applicant can give us more information if you have any questions on that. But it appears that that unit has been captured, and then you'll have the additional units as well. And then here, and actually I called it out here on this screen as well. And you see our layout right here of the 14 mobile home spaces. Drainage, pretty standard as we see on most applications of this type. Jared Landry with SE Civil performed it, and our colleague Tucker Stewart helped us with the review of Baldwin County Highway Department and accepted drainage. And here is an additional drainage drawing, so you can see the drainage improvements. And then pretty standard here, your utility information, power, sanitary, sewer, and water. And then very similar to Sean's case previously, the fire protection meeting the ISO standard as certified here by SE Civil. And so Commissioners have our condition of approval here, and we have the pretty standard conditions that we have right here, just so that our applicant is aware of the timelines going forward and the fact that they get their subdivision permit from Baldwin County Highway Department. With that, Commissioners, happy to answer questions.
Any questions for staff? Okay. Buford, is this any way connected to the RV park to the east, or is this just a standalone mobile home park?
This one is a standalone mobile home park. Okay. Yes, sir.
All right.
Standalone on a totally separate parcel. They just happen to be adjacent.
Okay. All right, Aaron, Jared, you just gonna do it, huh, Aaron?
Yeah. Aaron Collins, SE Civil. I'm here to answer any questions you got. And likewise on this parcel, we have an existing unit, and our client is aware that if they try to tear it down and put anything else there, they would have to come back in for a site plan modification.
Okay. Any questions for the engineering? Thank you, guys. I had no one else signed up. Is there anybody that didn't sign up that wishes to speak on this item? I'll close the public hearing. Matthew, you have any, Buford, do you have anything else?
No, sir.
All right. I'll entertain a motion then.
I'll make a motion that we approve, subject to conditions outlined by staff.
Mr. Welch made a motion to approve. Do I have a second? Second. Mr. Davis. All right. Any questions or comments on the motion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion's approved. All right, we're going to open a public hearing for our next item, which is case number PUD 23-9 and CSP 23-16 Club RV Park. Ms. Mitchell? Oh, does anybody need to declare any prior communication on this item?
Okay, this is a 231-unit RV park. This is in Plain District 30, and it is zoned RA, so low-density RV parks are allowed as a conditional use with CSP approval, and that's why we're doing both applications tonight. Again, the 231 sites, all interior roads will remain private. Location, this is a crop, or you can see the whole plan, and it connects to Brinks Willis Road in the north and Keller Williams Road to the south, and here you can see those. And the connection is actually via easement, which I'll show you in another slide in a moment. Adjacent use, and then the adjacent property photos. And again, this is pulling from the zoning ordinance that low-density recreational parks are allowed in RA. And then here's some of the requirements for RV parks in zoned areas. They may not be occupied, and I know that comes up a lot. And this one is in a zoned area, so they would not be used as permanent occupation. 6 campsites per acre, that's the low density, because 15 would be allowed in high, like the regular high density. 30-foot setbacks, detention, a very large detention pond shown in the center that has been approved by Highway, reviewed and approved by them. There are jurisdictional wetlands, and so they have an ADEM permit, and this is just a highlight. Boggy Branch passes through there, extensive wetlands, and those are protected by a 30-foot wetland buffer, non-disturbed buffer. It is also in a flood zone, and so I've highlighted here the floodway, and this is AE flood zone. We have a 1% annual chance of flooding, and according to the Baldwin County Flood Damage Prevention Ordinance, we have added this note from the ordinance to the site plan that is on the site plan itself, and that just reiterates that RVs cannot be permanently occupied. They can't stay on site for more than 180 days, and they have to be road ready. And that way, if there were some kind of storm they had to evacuate, they must be road ready and have quick disconnect utilities. Some of the amenities, there's a large pool area, playground, mini golf course, and then dumpster locations to the north and south. Parking plan, there are several, you have within the sites themselves, each one is required to have one, and they have quite a few sites that are large enough to accommodate 2, and some even are enough for 3, but we only allow them counted for 2. And then this just shows the supplemental parking based on the number of buildings and employee parking and things like that. A couple of the proposed structures, this is the clubhouse, there's a laundry facility, and they all meet height requirements for that planning district. Here's the access. You have to widen the roads at the entrances to 24 feet wide for 300 feet in each direction, so they will have to do that on both Brinks Willis and Keller Road. So both those roads will require widening. This is some more details about the deeded access. It passes through a property to the south. They have been in communication with the owners. The owner of, the same person owns both of these parcels. Density and open space requirements, it meets the requirements. Open space, you have to set aside at least 20%, which would be 10.9 acres, and they have 20 acres set aside according to the site plan. And then usable open space has to be 50% of the required, so 5.5. And so I've gone through in the green and measured the areas that we would consider as usable. No flood zones, floodways, wetlands, detention, and so they do meet the requirements for open space there. Fire protection, they will require installation of the water mains to meet ISO, and throughout the site plan you can see where the proposed fire hydrants. There are more, I just did a close-up of one section. And there are also 2 entrances, and so the fire chief has approved the design for that. Some of the landscaping, extensive landscaping around the clubhouse area. This is the Brinks Willis entrance. Most of it around the perimeter, there are existing, there's a 30-foot perimeter buffer, and they're leaving the existing vegetation there. And what they've done is gone through and looked anywhere that the existing is not adequate, they have supplemental plantings in there. And they didn't have an overview. The entire plan is broken down to 16 sheets, so I just took a couple to show you kind of to illustrate what that would look like in those areas where they have to supplement. So staff analysis, this is the reason it has the CSP, multiple use development, over 5,000 square feet of buildings, non-residential, adjacent, and the fact that it's an RA. And then we felt like there have been several other RV park and mobile home parks approved in Brinks Willis in this area, so it does fit in with some of the other developments in that area. So we recommend approval. So on the CSP side, the conditions that the signage will meet the requirements of Article 16, and then the things that we typically memorialize about the order and the process of going through this. So do I need to pause for each one to have you vote, or do both and then have you do them
I
separately?
do have a quick question, Sean. We had discussed increasing the default 180-day for a CSP to
Oh, that's
1 year.
right. Yes.
Just we're seeing so many delays, and then
now-
folks are letting these expire, and then they have to come back in front of you all. So maybe we can just note that we're going to do a
Is
1
that down
year on
here,
that.
this part? Oops, I guess I'm in presentation mode, so I can't change it, but yes, I want to make a note. So that's supposed to say 1 year? 1 year, okay, so I will edit that slide to say 1 year. So would they vote on this independently? Or to do both and then do?
They can do them both in the same.
Okay, so let me move on to the PUD approval then. So the two conditions for that, as I mentioned before, Brinks Willis and Keller Road both have to be widened. And the second condition, AlDOT may require some kind of improvements at the intersection of 59 and Brinks Willis, because that is a problematic intersection, and so that's something that the developer will have to work with AlDOT to resolve. And then the rest are the standard ones. And then I know you'd brought up one during the working session about potential signage or something for the flood zone, so that would be up to you if you want to
Okay.
add a condition. Okay?
Is that it?
Yes.
Any questions for staff?
Make sure.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
My question has to do with the health issues or environmental issues of a recreational pond that is potentially at least 1/3 served by floodwater. How do you manage that to be recreational under those circumstances so that it's safe for the folks who are in this RV park to use it as recreation?
So are you referring to this detention pond?
On all of the,
It's labeled as a recreational pond under.
yeah, it's labeled recreational pond.
And is the
On the, go back to the floodplain.
Right, now the
picture.
floodplain is in a different, you're right, it does overlap the floodplain, right. It's outside of the wetlands, but you're correct, it does overlap. Let me go back to that
Yep.
slide.
And I just don't understand how you could have any quality control to allow people to get in that recreational pond.
And I would let the developer address that one, or answer that
Yeah,
question.
he signed up to speak. That might be a question for the developer. Any other questions for staff?
One real quick, on the note on the plan regarding no permanent occupation of RVs and all of that, does that fall under code enforcement? Or does someone have to complain about that? Or do we just kind of randomly drive through and say, hey, how long have you been living there?
So we do rely on complaints, but what we have found is that most RV parks like this self-enforce
Pretty
something
good
like that,
about
because they don't want people building decks and stuff
Sure.
like that on them. But we do get complaints with some of these smaller ones and have to deal with it.
All right, thank you.
You know what my pet peeve always is garbage. And I guess unlike 39, which has done a good job, I think, of putting in something to regulate the amount of dumpster space, because just looking at this, these two spots don't look like enough for this many lots, but we can't really, not a whole lot we can do in this district, I presume.
And one interesting thing about working with District 39 is we coordinated a lot of that with Baldwin County Solid Waste. And the Solid Waste Authority would serve this site, and they would have their own separate requirements that they would enforce on this site. So some of that was just making sure there was a teamwork opportunity for us and Baldwin County Solid Waste.
All right, any other questions for staff? If not, I will call up And I'll let either Philip Nuckney or Jason Wooten, I don't know if you both just want to come up and speak.
Good afternoon, Jason Wooten. I represent the developer. My apologies. I guess I'll fall on the sword. I'll label it a recreational pond. His intent is to put a fence around it. It's just for aesthetics. There is not going to be swimming, no fishing, no actual use of the water body.
Okay.
Excuse me. Any other questions? Be happy to answer them.
Yeah, I do think that's an important clarification, though, because I assume since it was marked recreational pond that it was a retention pond, but you're saying it's actually just a detention pond, so it will remain dry most of the time?
No, it is a wet pool below the structure, but the structure, it will detain in the open space and discharge through the structure. There is a wet pool there. There is a constant pool. It is a wet pond.
But this is not in any way intended to be a feature of this park?
Other than aesthetics, no.
Well, if it has a fence around it, it's not going to really be aesthetic at all, right?
Just a steel metal fence.
You have to speak in the microphone.
Hi, Philip Nucky here. We're just going to be putting a metal fence around the whole pond. We actually don't want any children falling into the pond of any type of nature. We're going to have just gate access just for maintenance to get in there to keep it all tidied up and maintained, but other than that, that's all it is going to be. Any other questions?
Do you plan on having the mosquito squad out there on a regular basis?
You know what? If you want to come out and help me, that would be great, because it's going to be a long job.
I would just recommend that
I'm referring to the water, the standing
itself.
water in
Yeah,
that
we're going to
pond.
actually have inside the pond actually some water things to actually move the water and turn the water itself. So inside the pond itself, yeah. So we don't want it to be stagnant at all.
So my recommendation would be just that we note that as a contingency, that there'll be a metal picket fence, basically.
It's actually on the plan.
Oh, okay.
Yep, we actually have it on the plan showing a metal fence.
Well, it might be on the construction plans, but I don't know if, is it on our plans?
I hadn't seen it.
Okay.
It
I'll
could
get
be
it.
on
Probably
another
the construction
sheet,
plans,
yeah.
which is
It
not
probably
something
is.
we see in this step.
It is not on that drawing. We will add a detail and a plan delineation.
Okay, any other questions for the engineer? And
I have a question. As a significant portion of this is in this flood zone, you know, we're just seeing 1% of annual flooding. What 231 sites or whatever it is, let's say there's about 100 in this floodway. What happens when, you know, somebody's, I guess I don't like these vehicles in these flood zones. You know, somebody could not be, their machine could be unmovable at the time, even though they're not living in it. They may be out of town, you know, in some ways, and I'm not saying we can do anything about it, but I don't like this water threat, us planning in this water threat area. And
It is a flood zone AE. If you'll notice, sorry. It's a base flood elevation of 39 to 38 in the majority of that flood zone. We're actually, don't quote me on exact numbers, but we're probably around elevation 40 or higher for the majority of those sites.
Actually, it's 42 and a quarter is the lowest thing for high.
42, okay. I knew I was above it, I didn't remember the exact number.
so you're saying that what your experience or your knowledge is it's not as drastic as what we're seeing on this screen?
In my experience, if it was a house, I could file for a LOMA with FEMA and have it removed from the flood zone itself.
any other questions? Okay. Thank you, sir. George Watkins signed up to speak.
I'm George Watkins, and I guess I've been familiar with this place since 1959. I was the mule in 1959, but I retired. Now I get to be the boss of the 6 acres next to it. And I think Mr. Mullick has rang the bell here. Right below my place, my 6 acres, is a old pond. It used to be a pond. The elevation of that pond, the bottom of that pond is 39 feet above sea level. And he's right, it's about 42 feet there in some places, but some places it's 40, where this floodplain he's talking about. When this thing floods, and it takes about 2 inches of rain to do it, let's see how often we get 2 inches of rain around here. It fills up this pond. Between me and 59, the elevation goes up 8 more feet, so this water's coming from 59 pretty damn good. North of me, there's a 3-inch culvert going under Keller Road that can be completely full sometimes. I've dug a ditch all the way back to that pond below me, but the pond fills up pretty fast. The only way that pond can get to Boggy Branch is to go across all these 4 paved roads there that he's planned. I don't think that's going to work. I guess that'll say what I want to say. When I was there, Mr. Eli Flowers had a drag line scrape some of that dirt where the water wouldn't stay in that pond all the time. Later on, my wife owned that property as a horse ranch. When her son was young, when the pond would flood trying to get to Boggy Branch, he'd get on a raft and float down that pond. It gets to be 20 to 30 feet wide when it floods. I realize it'd probably only be 2 feet deep, but it's a pretty vicious flood. Something else has got to be done. It just can't cross 4 paved roads. There's 2 other asides I want to mention. I have a friend that lives on that place right now, 2 or 3 friends really. They're gopher turtles. They sometimes live on my place and sometimes on that place. And there's something else really weird over there, and it's an indigo snake. I only see one, but occasionally I see this indigo snake, both of which are relatively endangered species. I realize they're not responsible for their care, but I would like for them, when they bulldoze all this stuff, to pay some attention to those 2 critters. I guess that's about what I have to say.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
All right, any other questions, comments? We did discuss in work session about somehow signing these lots that are within these flood zone areas. I don't know if we still want to entertain that thought or not. I'll leave that up to the Planning Commission, whoever makes a recommendation, if you want to include that or not. I'll close the public hearing and I entertain a motion.
I would add, though, if the goal, if you are so inclined to do something in order, like under the public safety and welfare of the community or the renters there, to give them some type of notice that it is in a flood area there, or there are certain ones that are in the flood area so that they know. If you do it on the power hookup, it seems to me that at that point they've already rented that lot and they're already there, and then they're hooking up. So there's not really, to me, the notice requirement so that they have the full, knowledge of kind of where they are and how that may be affected by certain type of rainfall events. So if you are so inclined to include some type of verbiage somewhere, I think you should give that a consideration if that's where you wanted the verbiage to be on each individual hookup, because by then they've already probably signed a contract and agreed to rent that particular lot.
It's true.
And one thing that I did not realize, but they spoke to here, that AE flood zone, I'm speaking a little out of my wheelhouse here, but that AE flood zone is defined by an elevation. And so it's shown on that map based on existing elevations. And if every space and the roadways for this project are above that elevation, then technically next time FEMA ran the study, those will no longer be in the flood zone. And so it may resolve itself so long as there's a note making it clear that all infrastructure and spaces will be constructed at an elevation that is higher than that flood zone. So that, I'm just wondering if that would resolve itself, and that would be a question for the engineer in that situation.
Okay.
My turn is past, but I'd like to say something.
You have to come back to the mic.
if this water's retained and it can't cross these 4 roads, there's only one place for it to go immediately, and that's my place, which is at 42, and I really don't want it there.
Okay? All right. I'll close, I don't know if I did, but I'll close the public hearing now, and we'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, if I heard that correctly from Matthew, are we talking about now adding a contingency to this that requires, adding something to what would ostensibly be the construction plan that would raise this elevation so that it would quote-unquote resolve itself, or are we going to still try to figure out some way to add a notation to, I guess, the rental agreement regarding the existence of this floodplain?
I think we can add, maybe we can just add a contingency that the construction, unless there's an objection, that the construction of all infrastructure and spaces shall be at an elevation such that they are no longer subject to the AE flood zone. And I think if that contingency's in there, and there's no objection, then I believe the issue's going to resolve itself.
Thank you.
Can that be done before we vote on that and have to come back and fix that? Do you know?
You need to come to the microphone.
We are above it in the majority of area. I mean, I can't sit here and certify that we're above it at every single location, but we are above the base flood elevation for the majority of the site. I'd have to verify a few spots. Like my developer who's been studying the plans, we're generally in the area of elevation 42, and I think our highest BFE to the north is around 39 to 40. And those 42 elevation spots he's talking about is around base flood elevation 39 or 38. So we're 3 to 4 feet above it. And I would have to go back and verify everything as far as every single site. And we would be happy to handle that with the construction plan. For my clarification,
I just don't want to vote for it and say because all the sites, and then you come and you start building, and some of the sites are, and we've kind of put you in a position where now you're non-conforming to the approval of the site plan the way that we approved it. So I just want to make sure that we're not putting you in a corner by saying that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Would it be okay if we made sure that any site that did not conform to above that flood elevation requirement in construction, that we would have to make notice to anybody renting those lots, we'd have to put in there? I think we're gonna clear it anyways on everything being, because I've already checked with the building department on stuff and said, hey, our lowest is 42.25, and she said that actually we'd be above on everything then, so. But if for any reason there's not, I'd be more than happy to put it in the actual documentation for anybody renting that space saying, hey, you are in a flood zone, but.
And that would be if the commission approves that. I think that probably fixes the concern that they had, though.
Yeah.
for my clarification, you or Matthew said y'all worked on signage for other sites to notify residents or notify tenants that you're in a flood zone?
No, what we were saying is that during the work session, when we were discussing this particular case, we were trying to come up with a way to inform the renter or of that lot that it was in a flood zone. And so one of the things was a signage on the power hookup. But my concern was by that time, they've already entered into an agreement and are actually hooking up. So I don't think it served the purpose once I thought through it.
Gotcha.
And so that was all we were talking about.
I've seen similar signage like in a motel parking lot. Your parking area is in flood zone, whatever.
Right.
So at that point, you've already rented the room, so same issue, but. I
Right,
understand.
right.
And he could have a noted document inside the rental office that outlines these areas also.
I think he's presented a good solution. He said he's willing to put them on notice before they sign that lease, if there's any that are still below that. That's right.
Okay.
I would hope that if you're going to put that in your contract for those specific lots that potentially could be in the flood zone, that you would not include it in the fine print at the bottom, but somewhere where it's easily recognized.
I'd be more than happy to put it in red and bold up front.
Great.
I really believe that none of our sites will be there.
Okay. And Mr. Watkins, not to make it sound like we didn't acknowledge you, much of what you said, there's going to be construction plans done by the engineer submitted to our county staff. They're going to have to address the runoff, and that will be looked at. It's not something that we address here, but our staff will be looking at the items you talked about tonight. That just comes through our planning commission, our planning department when they do their reviews. All right, so plenty of discussion. How do you want to take action on this one?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion we approve Club RV Park, subject to staff conditions, including notification on rental agreements regarding a site existing in a floodplain,
If needed.
if needed.
Okay.
Second.
Mr. Booger seconded. Mr. Seibert has made the motion. All right, this motion to approve. Any questions, discussions on the motion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All right, the motion's approved. All right.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
I'm sorry, can we take about a 5-minute break?
5 minutes.
Yes, sir.
All right, we will take a 5-minute break. Where we left off, I'm going to open the public hearing at 54, Smallwood subdivision. Does anybody need to declare prior community? Okay. Ms.
All
Mitchell?
right. This is a fairly simple one, 2-lot subdivision.
When it rains 4 or 5 days, it comes over my fence about 5 feet. And then I had pumpkins out there, full-grown pumpkins, that 4 or 5 days. Then it covered my pumpkins completely up to the stem. Are they going to cover it? Or are they going to fence it off and keep it from coming onto my property and destroying mine?
Okay. Ms. Mitchell, do you want to just address the number of units?
The number of lots, like this is an unzoned area, so you can't put more than 2 houses per parcel on a lot. Now, are you on this parcel behind it?
Yes, I'm behind.
Okay. And so the one they're subdividing now is the front 2 lots on the road. So this other one was split out by an exempt subdivision. That's where the pond is. So that's a separate, that was a different
It's on the
process.
backside.
Exactly, right. So this subdivision is on the front side of that, on the road side to the east.
So what's going to happen to the part that's connected to mine?
You have to ask the owner, like I said, that one was split out in a previous exempt
that's actually not
subdivision.
part of our subdivision
It's
or not.
not.
That's
So we're
not.
just doing the front 2 that are not part of,
Just the
that
front
don't
two.
include the pond.
Okay, all right, thank you then.
Kevin Cattle?
What I see on the property is that you really need an environmental impact study. Based on that pond, which is sometimes a pond and other times it's just a marshland. It has certain plants that eat insects, and then we have these tortoises. And when they cleared it the first time, we had these little baby tortoises all over. We were buying lettuce.
Are you talking about the site where the pond is?
The whole entire area has these little tiny tortoises. The parent tortoises dig these big, huge holes, and the little ones came out when they cleared the territory there. And my daughter keeps going, I'm tired of buying lettuce for them. So she makes me go to dumpsters at night looking for lettuce. Okay.
Now we're growing our own, but.
So, I mean, that's why I say, an environmental impact study has to be done for the area, and because of that, they have to do perk systems if they go and put a septic system in. There are no sewers, and towards the rear of that property is wet. The Webbs that live just north of that property are afraid because Smallwood Lane, every time that pond fills up, it runs across their driveway coming in, and it undermines it. I put riprap in there, sandbags. I steal all the sandbags I can, put them in there, and right now it seems to have been holding for 2 months, but as soon as we start getting heavy rain, I don't know where the riprap goes or the sandbags or anything else. The next thing you know, we have holes in the road.
Tell me where your property is in relation to the site we're talking about.
We're right to the, I'm right to the north of the property behind the Webbs.
Okay.
So,
All right. All right. Anything else?
No, that was it. Oh, she was telling me about snakes or, I
There's
don't
a
know.
lot of wildlife there, including the carnivorous pitcher plant, which is endangered and protected along with the golfer tortoise. The first time they'd come in with the bulldozers and made a path through there in order to sell it or promote it, we had so many little baby golfer tortoises running down the driveway, just running out of that woods there, and they are endangered and protected.
I don't know.
Well, just keep in mind, they're not constructing anything on this site. These are 2 lots.
No,
that are
the
just
the
being-
tortoises aren't building anything, but holes in the ground.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay.
Is there anybody else that did not sign up that wanted to speak to this? All right. Closing the public hearing. Any questions, any additional comments? Ms. Mitchell?
no, sir.
Nope. I'll entertain a motion. Unless you had questions.
I make a motion we approve the preliminary plat.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion's approved. All right, we'll open now public hearing for case number SC 23-11, the BFLC Cowpen Creek Phase 4. Does anybody need to declare prior communication on this item? Mr. King?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Mr. Chairman, I am going to carry on the tradition of reviewing BFLC cases for Mary, apparently. And so, not a complicated thing, planning commissioners, but so you're aware that when your packet came out, it came out as a concurrent application. Now, Mary wisely gave you a preamble in the packet you would see that would advise that this is going to come before you actually as a preliminary plat application, which is how we're handling applications with common driveways going forward. Much more straightforward to do it that way. So what you're going to be considering today is actually SPP 23-13 as a preliminary plat. And so this would be a 5-lot subdivision, a continuation of the BFLC project as you see right here. Staff recommend approval as you see on screen. The background information here, just a reminder, this is in unzoned planning district 13. Now, what I would point out here too, with 5 lots, you're going to have one of the lots is going to be pretty considerable size. And also location, as you see here in unzoned planning district 13. This is a very irregular shaped lot, so Mary added a feature in here that I'll explain in just a moment here. And again, you have your aerial image. What she wanted to be clear is to make it clear that you've got 3 smaller lots, and then lot 5 is a very large remnant of the site. And then also, because of the unusual shape of the property, she made it very clear the areas outlined in blue are other properties that are adjacent but not involved in this one. So those are parcels that are not included in this. They just happen to be in an unusual shape. And so here's the plat itself. Zooming in here for you commissioners just to show why we're doing this as a preliminary plat, because you have the common driveways, which we've gone through many times, and our colleagues at Baldwin County Highway Department help us with that. In terms of wetlands, they're using the option of reflecting a 50-foot wetland buffer allowable in subdivision regulations for a large lot subdivision is this. Mr. Lee provided our drainage narrative in this case. Again, what you'd expect to see on a large lot subdivision. We have our utilities in here, basically power. Health department will handle septic tanks as they normally do. So approval recommendation, and then we added some standard conditions because this one is a preliminary plat, just to memorialize for the applicant that process going forward, that they'll go through, build the common drives through the highway department, through their review process, then come back to staff for a final plat. Not unlike we do for a larger subdivision, because procedure they are going to be installing an improvement. With that, commissioners, happy to answer questions.
Okay, any questions for staff? Okay. Mr. Lieb, do you have anything you need to add? Just if we have questions? Anybody have any questions for the engineer? Okay. So we are taking action on SPP 23-13.
Yes, sir. SPP 23-13 is the actual case you're considering for preliminary plat approval.
All right. I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion we approve, subject to staff conditions.
Okay. Mr. Cybers made the motion to approve. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Mullick seconded the motion. Any questions on the motion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We'll open the public hearing now for case number SC 23-13, which is the Meadows at Fairhope subdivision. Does anybody need to declare prior communication on this item?
Okay, and again, this is a fairly simple, straightforward one. This is a 3-lot subdivision, and this is in Planning District 17. It is not zoned. Lots range in size from 2 acres to 3.95. And this is what they look like. And this straddles, it connects County Road 3 to Highway 98. Utilities, one small area of non-jurisdictional wetlands that have been added to the plat. We recommend approval with no conditions other than the standard to meet subdivision regulations. And that's it.
All right, any questions for staff?
Mr. Chairman, this is kind of a point of order. We discussed it a little bit beforehand. The Meadows subdivision here, there is a Meadows subdivision that also is between County Road 3 and State Highway 98 that creates a little bit of confusion there.
The official name is the Meadows at Fairhope. So
Yes.
by adding that, it
And I think the
distinguishes
other
it.
one is the Meadows at Point Clear.
Mhm.
The reason I raised the question is because of the similarity in the
Oh, right.
definition of the location.
Mhm.
Does that give anybody heartburn other than me?
Doesn't to me. The street name would be different, but subdivision names, I've never noticed that be a problem, but unless somebody else knows something I don't. Good point.
Mhm.
Any other questions? I have one signed up. Samuel Page is the property owner. Is that right?
Appreciate the work all of you do. Most of it's volunteer work, and I appreciate it. Just a note of clarification, it says the owner is FTX Investments. It's actually FTK. Now, we sent affidavits. This was an error made at closing by the title company, but it has been corrected, and we sent the proper paperwork. Just want to be sure that Ashland, they got that. I didn't want that to show up later and hurt us. Thank you much.
Thank you. All right, that's all I had signed up to speak. Is there anybody else that didn't sign up to speak and wanted to speak on this? All right, I'm going to close the public hearing. Any questions, comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion on this item.
Move its approval.
Mr. Bowyer's made a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Seconded.
Mr. Seibert, second the motion. Any questions, comments on the motion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, we're going to move quite along here with next item. We'll open public hearing for case number SC 23-17. It's a re-subdivision of Lot 5, Rabin Estates subdivision. Does anybody need to declare any prior communication on this item?
All right, this is a
Mitchell.
9-lot subdivision in Plain District 2, unzoned, and the lots range in size from 3 acres to 5.28. No traffic study or anything required, just do the number of lots. This is on Paul Road. And there were no wetlands, and our resource planner verified that. Drainage narrative, there will be no improvements required because they aren't developing at this point. They're fairly large lots. Utility letters, and so we recommend approval with no conditions. And, oh yeah, I'm sorry. I was thinking of a different case, but yes, there are no conditions approved for this one.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for staff? I will admit I tried to get by everyone, but this is one I did not make it to. I felt like I had to go to Montgomery to get there. No, I'm kidding. It's north end of our county, it's on up there. So, any questions, comments?
Mr. Chairman, just for this, was this subdivided before, and that's why this is a resub?
Yes, the original was back in October of last year. It was a 5-lot subdivision, and this is just one of those that was split out.
Okay.
Like the original one covered, I believe, is this whole area. Actually, it's all of these, and so this was lot number 5 that was split.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, I just learned that there may have been an error that this was not on our form for folks to sign up in. I'm not exactly sure, but let's just check with the audience
Okay.
and make sure there's not anybody here who needs to speak to
Okay.
this.
All right, no other questions for staff. Was there anybody here signed up to speak on this one or wish to speak to this? Okay, no one signed up. I'll close the public hearing. If there's no questions, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion we approve.
Mr. Davis made a motion to be approved. Do we have a second? Ms. Burnett seconded the motion. Any questions, comments on the motion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Our next item is, we'll open public hearing for, is case number SC 23-20. This is a re-subdivision of Lot 1, Hollinger Ridge. Anybody need to declare any prior communication on this item? Mr. King?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Chairman, similar to the case before us, this is a re-subdivision of one lot of an existing subdivision. And so this request is to take one of those original lots, divide it into two more lots. I did show what isn't in your packet is the slide of the previously approved subdivision. So the northernmost lot of that slide 2778E is being requested to be divided here. All your background information right here, what I'd call out to it, this is in Planning District 12 and is zoned RA Rural Agriculture, asking for two lots. What I'd clarify, Commissioners, that's not in your packet is you see up here in yellow. So the pin right here is the one that you're considering dividing. This pin right here, Mary was very wise to point it out to you, that provides the access to these two new lots. And of course, Planning District 12, you see right here. And so this is what is requested for division. This is a separate parcel that satisfies the access requirements because we're using the 20-acre rule here. And so in lieu of fronting on a paved road, they can have 60-foot access easements. So that parcel right there satisfies that. Otherwise, the rest is a typical 20-acre rural subdivision we see from time to time. Here's the full plat zoomed in where you can see the detail a bit better. And here's the full plat itself. So here, Mary's just refreshing us on the available requests you can make in a 20-acre rural type of subdivision, have our contours. So each lot is greater than 20 acres. We talked about the existing easements, which will be altered to show on this site. They went the extra step and showed utilities, but technically they're not required to. And we see utility information right here on the providers. They would go through the health department for septic tanks. And also, in the 20-acre rule, they can use the 50-foot wetland setback in lieu of going through a delineation. And so we are recommending approval, and like we do on a lot of these, memorialize the final plat signatory requirements. With that, Commissioners, happy to answer questions.
Okay. Any questions for staff?
So does that extra parcel there, does that get deemed an easement for both of those, or is it just part of?
They would go through the necessary steps to record any easements to make certain they have access to that property. Yes, sir. And that's why we wanted to call it out, to make certain you knew that they were following the requirements of the 20-acre rule to have access. And what you typically see is you have to have road frontage for access.
Okay. Is there anyone that wishes to speak to this item? Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing. Any questions, comments for staff? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
Move its approval.
Mr. Bowyer's made the motion to approve. Have a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Mullick seconded the motion. Any questions, comments on the motion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item is open public hearing for case number SC 23-21, Coleman's Crossing. Does anybody need to declare any prior communication on this item? Mr. King?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Also presenting another item for Mary. Mr. Chairman, this should be a pretty straightforward 3-acre large lot subdivision, not a 20-acre rural subdivision, but a typical one like you see, but 3 very large lots that we're recommending approval. You'll see this is zoned in Planning District 32, RA Rural Agriculture. The smallest lot is 7.52 acres. All the other background information is on screen as you're typical seeing. Have our planning district map right here, and you see Mary provided us a call-out map as well as an aerial image. And then she zoomed in for you on the plat itself. Note there is a pretty significant wetland area on Lot 2, but that also lot is 9.55 acres. They did show all of the required wetland buffers as is required in this type of situation. Here's the entire plat so you can see everything. Of course, here's where the wetland delineation was performed. And then drainage, we followed the typical procedure. Had Mr. Hamlin, in this case, was the PE that prepared that, and of course, Baldwin County Highway Department helped us review that. And the various utility providers shown here, and very similar here, we have our approval recommendation memorializing the plat sign-out procedure. Happy to answer questions.
And we are or are not restricting access to one side only?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for pointing that out. That there is a restriction called out on the plat. The text is going to be very hard for you to see here, but that is included explicitly on the plat.
So no access to County Road 97?
That's correct.
Okay.
That is correct. And we have that in the plat, so that way in the future when the various owners are going through either their driveway or turnout permits, Highway will be able to cross-reference this plat and know what is required.
Okay. Any questions for staff? I have one signed up, Randall Tillman.
Hey, I'm Randall Tillman with David Lowry Surveying, here on behalf of the owner. Just answer any questions you might have.
Okay. Anybody have any questions? I don't think so. All right, appreciate it. All right. I'm going to close. Is there anybody else here that did not sign up that wished to speak to this? Okay, with that, I'll close the public hearing.
I have a question. If we're not coming out on County Road 97, which is to the east, if I'm correct, they're all coming out on the west side?
Yes, sir.
And that is Royal Lane. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other questions? Entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion we approve.
Mr. Davis has made a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Seconded.
Mr. Seibert seconded the motion. Any questions on the motion? Comments? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, open public hearing now for case number SC 23-22, Persimmon Creek Estates, Phase 3. Does anybody need to declare any prior communication on this item? Ms. Mitchell?
Okay, just wait for it to open. Here we go. Okay, and this is Phase 3 of Persimmon Creek. We had the first two phases last year, so there's a two-lot subdivision. And this is in Plan District 12, and it is zoned RA, so both lots are over 20 acres, so this would be considered a large lot subdivision. So location of Persimmon Creek, and access is by Lechner Road. There are extensive wetlands on the property, and those are protected by a 30-foot non-disturbed wetland buffer. And we recommend approval. There are no conditions, but I did want to note there's been some confusion with the first two phases with people thinking they can further subdivide them. Because this will be an approved and recorded subdivision, the lots cannot be further divided through the exempt subdivision process, including family division. So again, I want to memorialize that in the slides just to make sure that everyone involved in this project is aware of that.
Okay.
Just to reiterate that.
All right, any questions for staff? All right, is there anybody here signed up? I'm sitting here, my thumb's about wore out. All right, you may come up and speak.
Come on up.
I can't get, I sit here and,
Yeah, I don't believe there's anybody who
Okay.
signed up on
Good.
these. Oh, there are two on this one, I'm sorry, okay.
I just didn't hear the last sentence you said, the last comment.
The note about not being able to further subdivide it?
Yes.
That part? Right. So once it's an approved recorded subdivision, you can't do it through an exempt subdivision, like a one-time split or family subdivision. You have to go through this process that we're doing tonight, where you submit an application and it has to be approved by the planning commission.
But at this point, it cannot be any less than 20 acres.
Well, they can further subdivide, but they'd have to go through this process where they submit an application and divide it. So it can be subdivided, but you can't do it as an exemption. That's the one where, like, you, as a citizen, will just approach the planning commission, the planning and zoning, we do it all administratively.
At this time, it's only being split into the two 20-acre lots back to where it was originally, correct? From 40 into the 20s, right?
The original parcel, correct, is being split into two 20-acre, listen, I'm trying to get to one that has the,
But the regulations for the subdivision say that none of the lots can be subdivided less than that. So is that something that could possibly happen?
do you mean like
The subdivision regulations state that they cannot be subdivided, you can subdivide to family, like immediate family. We were told that we could.
by the person selling the lots? That's why I have the note on the last page. Right, now, you could write into, like, the deed restrictions that they can't be further subdivided, but he didn't submit any.
We're just trying to make sure that these two lots are not going to be subdivided further.
They could be, if someone were to buy this, and as long as they met the requirements, like each one would have to front on a paved road if they're less than 20 acres, if, like they have to go through all the regulations of the subdivision or regulations.
But we would be notified if there was another hearing for that?
If you were an adjacent parcel owner, you would get something in the mail saying, like you did for this here, I assume you got something for this one tonight? Mm-hmm.
But, I'm on the other side. There's one, she is in between this and me. But,
Ma'am, we can't hear any of this.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. I'm talking
And I'm
directly
even
to
going to
her. I
ask, whether
apologize.
you need to give your names, both of you, if you're going to speak, so we have that on record, too.
Andrea Scott.
Melissa Walsh.
Okay.
So what we're trying to make sure here is that right now, they are not being subdivided into less than 20 acres, and that we would be notified if there was someone trying to do that.
Correct.
We would be notified of another hearing. It would have to go through
Right,
another
it
hearing.
would do the same process we're doing tonight.
Okay.
To further subdivide these, yes.
But if you're the adjacent owner of the lot that they're trying to subdivide.
Right,
She is,
correct.
and I'm here to speak for her. With
Because
her.
now we're breaking it in two lots, so there'll be now,
Well, she's lot 19, which is directly across Lechner from 22. 21, 22, whatever. She's
I'm lot
right.
19 and lot 22, I'm butt up to it.
And to cut right to the chase here, it's going to be very difficult to subdivide these lots less than 20
yeah, I
acres, because they
understand
have to
that
put in a
because of the
paved
wetland.
road and everything like that, which is extremely expensive. So it might not happen in my lifetime. I'm not guaranteeing that or
The
anything,
conditions
but
of the
just so you
subdivision,
understand.
which is why we were going out there, is that they were not going to be subdivided into less than what they are now, less than 20 acres, except for the 9-acre lot that's on Styx River. So that's what we were making sure of, that was not happening right now.
That's it.
Good?
Good
Okay.
question.
Thank you.
Anybody else on this item? All right, I'm going to close the public hearing. Any questions? Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
On the plat, it says Lot 22 and then Lot 22.
Oops, sorry. Okay, let me see if I can.
See it?
On this one?
Yes.
Oh, I probably copied and pasted it. So if I were to remove that, underneath would have the correct, let me take that box off. Yes, I copied and pasted it to put that on there. That one's lot 21. And then I corrected the acreage, but I didn't correct the lot number. So yes, it's 21 and 22.
Okay,
Thank you. That's my fault.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? I'll entertain a motion. I'm going to close the public hearing. Now I'll entertain a motion.
Move it's approved with staff recommended conditions.
Okay, Mr. Bowyer's made a motion to approve. Second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Mullick has seconded the motion. Any questions or comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, down to our last two items. Our next case will be open the public hearing for case number SPP 22-35, Horace subdivision. Does anybody need to declare prior communication on this item?
All right,
Ms.
this
Mitchell?
is an 11-lot subdivision, and we spoke very briefly about it during the earlier meeting. This is zoned RSF3, 11 lots, and it is in Planning District 37. And just a brief history of the property, it was originally part of Fairhope Falls Phase 1, and they were platted as individual lots. In 2022, they were converted into common areas and then sold. And then that person removed the drainage infrastructure that had been installed and approved installed, and then sold it to someone else as lots. And that's when the county got involved, and there were some numerous NOVs issued, and so this is an effort to resolve those. So here are the proposed lots. So basically, they reinstated the ones that were there originally. Location, you can see this is the rest of Fairhope Falls. So this is just south of Highway 104. The drainage report, this has been an ongoing process between the developer and the Highway Department and Planning and Zoning to review the plans to reconstruct basically what was there before and was removed. And so these are just a couple of the examples, like some of the grading, a very steep slope had been put in, so that fill had to be brought back in to reduce that slope. And again, the pipes replaced. And so that, as I said, there's been an ongoing conversation with Highway to approve the process. And these are the typical kind of utility letters we would have: fire protection. They're already, a lot of this infrastructure is already in place because it's part of Fairhope Falls. So as far as the fire hydrant, things like that were already installed. The original wetland delineation had expired, so we did ask them to do that again, especially since there were some questions about whether or not any of the wetlands had been affected by what was being done, and so those have been re-delineated. And as you can see, the existing road does encroach slightly into the buffer area, but they do have a 50-foot undisturbed wetland buffer and then a 100-foot buffer on the river because that's part of the local provisions for that planning district. So we recommend approval, and the conditions are, they have not yet met the broadband requirements, but that's something that can be done at final plat. Baldwin County Highway Department must continue to inspect and approve the improvements that are being done for drainage and grading. The applicant has to provide documents outlining maintenance of the drainage easements between Fairhope Falls Phase 1 and the Horse subdivision because there are areas that overlap. And so just to clarify who's going to be responsible for that. And then finally, this approval will replace all prior approvals for the subject property, and all prior approvals will be declared null and void. So just that long history of whether or not they're common areas or lots or whatever, this basically would kind of wipe the slate clean, and they would begin with what is now being proposed.
Okay. Any questions for staff? Okay. I have several people signed up. Jason Wooten.
I am Jason Wooten. I represent the owner/developer. I'll answer any questions y'all have.
Any questions for the engineer? All right, think not.
Thank you.
All right. Ken Becker.
Good evening. I'm Ken Becker. Now, on the one slide that you showed, the incline, where's that incline?
Let me get back to an earlier slide.
From for every one of those lots right there, they start with a 20-foot drop
Yes, sir.
from the access road.
Right, and that was
So
not
there's
initially
no-
done like that.
There's no incline. It's a drop, and the drainage comes right out into them lots. The existing drainage took it down to a retention pond, but this, it's a wall there on on a couple of lots, the first two lots. There's a wall, and the others are just straight drop. No fencing was ever put up to keep anybody from dropping off on there. So we have lots of kids that ride motorcycles, bicycles, what's to keep them from going off on that. I don't understand why they dug all that out to begin with. And it's not just the first few lots, it's 2 blocks worth of lots have done that. Even behind my house, they've dug down. So the people that are buying those lots don't have access to the alleyway.
Ms. Mitchell, what you were showing us is showing what they are going to do, right?
Correct, but they're trying to fix that, because you're right,
They're
that was done in violation of what was
They're
approved.
going to bring fill dirt back in,
A lot of it.
a lot of it.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Was there anybody else on this item? Not many of you out there. All right. All right, then I'm going to close the public hearing. Any questions, comments on this?
Mr. Chairman, this may have been covered in the work session, and I missed it, but these common areas were originally platted as common areas, and then they were sold, or they were not
They were
platted,
originally lots, and they were changed to common areas.
but then were ultimately sold back to become lots again.
Right.
But that does not, may be wrong, but that does not ultimately reduce the number of common areas that are in the subdivision to begin with?
Well,
And is that?
They weren't common areas to begin with. They were lots.
Right, I have
But
here,
they're actually going
But they
back,
became common areas.
but they weren't required to be common areas. They just converted them to common areas to do away because they couldn't develop the lots.
Okay, thank you.
New developer thinks he can, so basically returning it back to the way it was, so as I see it.
right, this is the original slide with the lots. So that was in 2013, and then here in 22 is when they were converted to common areas.
All right?
I had one just generic question about I'm going to say the wetland border. The road is through that. As long as we're not building on that, was that okay that they got the road constructed in that wetland area, or were they not supposed to do that?
I believe this was done before that 100-foot, like a lot of these buffers were brought in later with zoning, so they were not the same in 2013 when that road was constructed. So that's something that was, after the fact.
Any other questions? All right, we entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion, we approve, subject to staff conditions.
Okay, Mr. Cyrus made a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any questions, comments on the motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, last item. Open a public hearing for case number CSP 23-13, RSA The Experience. Does anybody need to declare prior communication on this item? Ms. Rhodes?
All right. So this is CSP 2313, RSA The Experience. They are located in Planning District 19 and zoned OR. The subject property is located west of Confederate Rest Road and south of Pine Grove Drive and Point Clear. The current use is the maintenance area of an existing golf course. It's approximately 4.38 acres. The applicant is Goodwood Mills and Kaywood, and the owner is Teachers Retirement Systems of Alabama. The request is the construction of additional maintenance buildings, as well as a pole barn. There's also the removal of one building and some concrete, which totals approximately 22,915 square feet. Here's a locator map and the site map, and you can see the adjacent zoning, which is residential. Here are the property images, the subject property, and the adjacent properties. The zoning requirements for OR. Here are the existing conditions, and I've tried to call out what each of the existing buildings are. This is their demo plan. The hatched areas will be removed. This is their site plan. I've highlighted the existing buildings, and then noting that the 25 by 75 metal building to be removed, and the slab's going to remain for the pole barn. And then here are the proposed buildings and what some of those buildings will be. Here's the site plan data table kind of zoomed in, showing that it does meet the requirements for OR zoning. Additional information, the site will have 31 9 by 19 parking spaces, as well as numerous loading and unloading spaces for the buildings. And here are just some of the floor plans and elevations for some of the buildings that will be on the site. So this would be the admin equipment repair building, and then the pole barn. This is the erosion and sediment control plan, as well as the drainage narrative. Here's the landscape plan. I did add some things after the staff report was printed showing the requirements for our landscaping, and this does include outdoor recreation, that 25-foot landscape buffer, and then just their plant schedule. The only agency comment we received was from the Highway Department. They are addressing the drainage report and the map, and so that will be a condition upon approval. And I'm not going to go through all of this. This is all in your staff reports. So staff recommends approval of this with the following conditions. So obtaining that turnout permit, approving the stormwater management plan by the Highway Department, that's in progress, and then memorializing the closeout conditions of section 18.9.7 before obtaining a certificate of occupancy. And then I do want to note at the very bottom there that 180-day default time period should be a year. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for staff?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Ms.
Looking at the existing layout, it looks like there's a hedge line outside the parcel on the, I guess it would be the northwest corner side. And it's where one of the buildings is going to be removed and be a pole barn. Do you see it?
So this one right here, do you see that I'm circling it?
Yes, but it's on this right here,
Mm-hmm.
that one. And it looks like, and why I'm asking is you require landscaping, and they're going to put the pole barn back exactly where it is. It looks like it's on the property line. So
Okay.
are they counting that hedge line as part of their landscaping? Do you see it?
I believe so. Let me just check their landscape plan real quick. I apologize for flying through these slides. So are you talking about this striped area here, this pole barn?
Well, that parcel looks bigger than the line. The line looks at it like it's in a different place.
Mm-hmm.
Are they moving the line?
No, ma'am.
That's going to be a question for the applicant. I'm guessing that's just something with the aerial imagery, but,
Could be off a
but
little
let's see
bit.
what the applicant says about it. That's a great question.
Okay.
Great question.
Other questions?
Yes. I'm looking at the diagrams, but I'm also noting that there are now 3 entrances, open entrances to the property. that don't appear to all three be showing on here, do they plan to close one of those?
I am not aware of that. The applicant could probably address this.
Okay. I mean, I was over there looking at it this morning, and in my opinion, it's a great improvement that's necessary to keep those golf courses as popular as they are. But it struck me that in looking at the diagrams and knowing the layout myself,
Right.
and the picture, actually the property image picture of the subject property, that is actually a driveway and a gate right behind that, which it would be the third entrance. There's one to the left down that road, and there's one to the right on, and I always forget what the name of all these roads are, but anyway, there is a third entrance, and just be curious as to whether they're going to leave that open or going to close it.
Yeah, I am.
We'll ask the developer when he comes up. Anybody else? Mr. Seibert, do you have a question? I saw your light. Okay, nobody else? All right. Jeremy, you want to come up? You waited this long. You got to say something now. You make a habit of this.
Hey, I'm just glad we're not here getting started at like 9 o'clock like I did last time. The first question, Ms. Burnett, we are not moving the line. Those hedges are on this property. All of that was done when there was really no zoning, and they just kind of put the property lines just kind of got developed somehow. I can't really tell you how. But that hedgerow is on this property. We're going to clean it out a little bit and replant to meet the landscape ordinance. But the plan is to keep it there, because on the other side of that hedge is the putting green.
Yes.
And you don't really want to be out there practicing your putt and looking at a pole barn. So they're going to keep that landscape in there as much as possible and just infill and kind of clean it up a little bit.
Okay, so that hedge line is on...
It's on this property, yes, ma'am.
Parcel.
Yes, ma'am. We're not, we at one time had talked about moving the property line, but we were able to do everything we wanted and fit it in there. So we didn't worry about it. The third entrance, we are closing it. The one in the, can you go back to the site plan, Cora?
Yes.
Not on Confederate, the one in the northwest corner.
This one right here?
That one. There's an existing one in the northwest corner. That is the one we're getting rid of completely. The one at the kind of the intersection there, we're putting it back, but really it doesn't get used because the residents really kind of don't. That's kind of an agreement or something they had made with the residents, but we're keeping it there for emergencies, just in case. But the main entrance is the one on Confederate at the southeast corner where the current gate is and what's currently being used. So we're going from 3 to 2.
All right. Anybody else have any questions for Mr. Sasser? Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else, Ms. Rhodes?
No, sir.
Anybody else have any questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Move its approval with the conditions.
All right. Mr. Brewer just made the motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Seconded.
I think this end of the table wants to go home more than this end. Based on the motions made tonight. All right. We have a motion to approve. Any questions, comments on the motion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. That's the last of our items. We have any new business? Any public comments?
I'd take a chance to make one public comment, and it's with the developments that are occurring. And I don't know if we as county have, I'm noticing some severe road surface degradation in near proximity to some of the developments that are occurring. And I don't know if that is something that we just wait till it's over, get it on a work order to fix back up, but, I mean, I think it's something we need to consider, or, is it a request to the developers? It seems like it's the worst, let's say, within a few hundred yards of these entrances, and I mean, these roads, some of these roads get kind of rough with in and out traffic, it seems, with construction. And hey, some of these places may be scheduled to resurface some of those, but it's just an observation I've made through travel.
Okay. Any staff reports?
I do want to highlight and thank Mary for her service to planning and zoning. She spent a lot of time at the county working in what can be very difficult environment sometimes, and I meant to recognize her last month. She'd earned her years, and she'd been just kind of waiting to decide when she was going to go ahead and officially retire, and decided that the time had come. So I just want to congratulate her and thank her. Again, thank each of y'all. There was one other thing I wanted to say, but I can't remember what it is now, so I can email it to y'all separately if necessary.
Okay. Legal counsel?
I don't have anything to say. I guess next month is the July meeting. Just hope that we'll have enough people for a quorum a couple days after the holiday.
That's a great point. Is it July 6th? I think it's July 1st, isn't it?
July 6th.
July 6th, okay. That's right. Commission meeting is July 5th on Wednesday, and then our meeting will be the next day, July 6th. So look ahead in your calendars and go ahead and try to pencil that in so that way it doesn't accidentally get buried.
Okay. So our next meeting is July the 6th. Nothing else? Appreciate all of you. We're adjourned.